Hi, welcome to Flight Test. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be building the F22 Raptor. Now guys, before we start this, I want to gush over the amazing people in the RC community. This is not really original design. This design has been done so many different times by so many amazing designers. We wanted to take our own little Flight Test spin on it. So what we did is we just changed up a couple key features, made it look a little more scale, adapted some building techniques that we used in previous builds, but it's also a great new start to a new series called the Simple Series. The F22 is going to be the first start of planes that are not swappable, but yet super easy to build. Our main goal with this is basically to have a plane that you can put together in the evening that all skill levels can enjoy and have success with. No matter how good or bad it looks, it's going to fly great. And hopefully a father and son can come together, make a memory very affordably and quickly. Before we get started, there's free plans down below on the link. Go ahead and go there if you want, or you can simply go ahead and get the speed build kit. We're going to continue with the speed build kits, and of course they're going to come with everything. And also, we always have an incentive for the first buyers. First 250 get a free decal. So these are our new decals coming out that we can logo it up. Little value and a little thank you for supporting us as well. Other than that, get your materials in order and we'll get started. First step is we're just going to go ahead and pop out the wing section. It's always good to start with the wings because it's the most gratifying and everything connects to the wings. There we are. As you can see, we have a fold here. This fold's going to need to be glued. This is very similar to the Versa wing and the other builds, but also we found out that this glue actually makes a very strong joint in there and gives a little bit more reinforcement to the wing. If you're really worried about strength, you can also run a very, very thin carbon fiber spar through this, but just make sure that when you glue it, that the wing doesn't sit like this, that it's nice and flat afterwards. Where you have to put a carbon fiber spar in or ever need it, but some people really like that option. Go ahead and open up the crack and put a simple bead of glue right down the middle, hop over that center section, and continue on about a ½ inch from the edge. At this point, lay it flat on a flat building table. Make sure you don't have any glue or anything that's going to dent the foam on the other side. And you can simply rip off a piece of foam off of your excess foam and smear it right down. That extra glue that's been held there is going to make a very, very strong glue joint and work very well. Go ahead and sit and let this dry. Now, if you need to lay your foam flat and you want to walk away and keep it from moving, a good tip is just to take something that's dense and heavy that's not going to dent your foam and lay it on there. That way you don't have to worry about pressing down, getting impatient, walking away, and then it dries crooked. It takes away that temptation to move it before it's fully dry. Now that it's dry, go ahead and remove the excess foam from your wing and knock out all your tabs. You should make sure when you remove your foam that only the paper is left, that no residual foam is left. So if it's coming out in multiple pieces, make sure this is very clean. Sometimes you can use a straight edge to get the rest of it out. Next, let's go ahead and remove the side rails for our wing. This is going to give it a tremendous amount of rigidity. And just as a reminder for you wonderful scratch builders out there, it's a very simple color code. Black is cut through, red is score cut, and blue is crease. You're not going to see any blue on this. Now that our side plates are ready to go on our fuselage, go ahead and go where there's a 50% score cut and just give it a little bit of bend. This is going to match the angle of the front of the wing of the FT22. Go ahead and give it a test fit. Just like that. Once we're happy with the fit, we're going to go back with our hot glue gun. We're going to put a bead of glue on the verticals. But not this part here. We're going to go on this, we're going to go actually on the fuselage itself and put a bead here. And simply press this down in place. Don't get impatient, make sure everything's nice and vertical and true. And hold pressure where there may be loose areas, hold pressure against those areas to keep it tight. Once that's dry, follow up with a reinforcement bead of glue. Doesn't have to be too thick. Around this area. The tighter you keep this, the less noisy the prop and slot will be. That was a hot one. Repeat the exact same process as you did on the first side. Once again, to reiterate, we're simply going to go on the lower level verticals, put a bead of glue. We're not going to touch this one here. And then we're going to go to the actual wing itself and put a bead of glue down in that recessed area. Although this is meant to be simple, we want the look at the very end of it to be beautiful and have a scale detail that is very nice. And we'll follow up with a bead of glue. Doesn't have to be thick. As you notice, I'm putting reinforcement glue on the inside. Reason being is the cleaner we can keep the outside, the better the plane's going to look. Next it's time to go ahead and put on our elevons. Elevons are ailerons and elevators mixed together. Now, although that sounds complicated, the plane is very easy to fly and very comparable to a flying wing. And just like we do with all of our builds, we're going to go ahead and do a 45-degree bevel right here on the hinge line. Make sure you don't do the same 45-degree bevel on the same side. If you don't want to use a razor blade, you can also use sandpaper. Let's go just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be on the very bottom of the airplane. So if you mess up a little bit, don't fret about that. Now that we have our elevons beveled, we're going to go ahead and install them on our fuselage. Nice thing about doing this ahead of time is you can lay your wings nice and flat on the building table and you're not going to be denting or damaging your airframe. So do this step first. Just like all of our builds, we're going to use tape. In this case, I'm going to use some nice good quality thin masking tape because we're going to reinforce it afterwards with hot glue. Simply apply your tape 50-50 and then match where the point of the elevon meets the point of the wing, trailing edge. It can overlap just a touch, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you match it on both sides and that you also have complete throw. Let's repeat the same same process on the other side. You should have about a 1/16 of an inch gap between the two elevons. Our next step is that we're going to flip these open here, and this tape is fine, but it's not going to last too long. It's going to eventually get weak and start pulling up that paper. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put a bead of glue down in here and seal it. Now if you don't like putting glue hinges, what you can also do is take packaging tape and completely wrap it around and make a tape hinge. Either way is fine, just make sure you reinforce it. I personally like the glue method. For the glue method, a simple thing to do is just get yourself a nice triangle piece of scrap foam, open up the joint, and I'd strongly recommend you do this one at a time. Lay a nice thin bead of glue, and don't go all the way. Go about 1/2 inch from the edge. Now the goal with this is going to be to scrape as much glue as possible out of that area. You want to work that glue down into the crack and into that hinge line, but remove any excess. If you don't remove all the excess, it's going to bind up on you. Strongly recommend once you're happy with that, go ahead and lay that flat. As long as you did this right, you're not going to end up with a glue joint. If it is glued together, simply force it open and trim out any excess glue that you need. And then we'll repeat the process on the next side. Once your glue hinge is dry, work it back and forth to make sure that you're happy with the throws. If you're not happy with the throws, go ahead and trim it with an X-Acto knife or do any repairs that you need. Now believe it or not, we're going to go ahead and put our servos and our push rods in ahead of time. That's going to make it a lot easier so we don't have to fumble around with a lot of extra foam in the way. And once it's out of the way, the build goes so much quicker too. We're using our Hextronic 9-gram servos. They're wonderful, resilient servos. We've used them from day one of flight tests, and we're going to continue using them. As you can see, I pre-installed our linkage stopper, the second hole from the outside. This design likes a lot of throw. You can really go crazy. You can always dial it back and have really timid flights with your dual rates or expos. If you're not sure what those are, go ahead and watch our beginner series. With the linkage stopper installed, we're just going to test fit this. And the way it's going to go in is just the outside here is going to be exposed. The inside of the servo will all be protected, and this air in the area here that will eventually be covered. Once we're happy with the fit, place some glue on the servo, insert it through the hole, and there we go. It's always a good idea to scuff up the plastic and make sure it's nice and clean. That's going to give the hot glue something to bite into. Unless you're like us where it doesn't last long enough to ever fail. There we go. Our next step is to install the push rods. Now the nice thing with this laying flat on the table is you don't have to worry about centering your elevons. As long as these are centered, everything's going to go together beautifully. Before we put our control horns in, go ahead and snake it through the very bottom hole of your control horn. This is going to give you the most throw possible. Now, if you're using a Hextronic 9-gram with the spacing, one hole from the outside on the servo arm, and also the hole closest in, you're going to get the full deflection without any binding on most transmitters. Some transmitters are a little bit differently, but you can always cut that back. Once you get advanced with flying this airplane, you're going to really want that extra throw to really have some fun with it. So go ahead and dial that in ahead of time, because it's much harder to go back and change it later. Alright, let's go ahead and test fit our control horn and open up that area. There we go. Now before we put our control horn in, we're going to go ahead and snake this push rod through the linkage stopper. Now you're going to notice in our speedboat kits, all the push rods are much longer. The reason being is we can get a 16-inch push rod for the same price as we do a 4. We'd much rather give you that extra material for future builds. So don't be surprised if you have to trim them a little more often now. Now that we have this hole open, so we can put a bead of glue down in our slot where the control horn goes, and insert your control horn. At this point we can trim our excess wire, do it about a ½ inch in front of the linkage stopper. Don't tell David I used his wire cutters. We're going to repeat the exact same process on the other side. And at the speedboat kit, the slot should line up the control horn supplied perfectly. If you're scratch building, make sure that the holes line up perfectly with your hinge line. That'll give you the same deflection up and down. And then once again, trim the front. Our next step is to apply the reinforcement. Now one problem plaguing F22s or this kind of design is oftentimes they're pushed to positive, but what happens is when you get too fast, the rod will start flexing. Now you can go ahead and take the classic things that we've done, zip ties and reinforce it, but a much easier way to both conceal the push rod and also reinforce it is to simply take a piece of foam board and then score cut it 50%. This is provided in the plans, but also you can do this easily at home with your own designs as well. Or simply take a screwdriver or a barbecue skewer, something that's round at the end, and open up that cavity nice and wide. Neat thing about the laser cut kits is it actually makes a little pocket inside there and opens it up and kind of glazes it. So it's really strong and it doesn't bind at all. But once you've opened that up, simply slide that cover around and give it a test fit. You want to make sure that this isn't bending too far out, so you don't want to mount it up close to here, but you don't want to go too far back where it's going to bind in the back. You simply want it right around the middle, and I actually use this little bump where our flashing is from our speedboat kit as a reference. It doesn't have to be spot on, and it's best for you to use your own servos and your own spacing with your own linkage stoppers. Just make sure that there's no binding at all. Once you're happy with that, carefully apply a bead of glue as far away from the wire as possible. You don't need to go crazy on the glue. On the old Fogies, we actually put a piece of tape to protect that. You're welcome to do it, but I don't think it's really needed in this build. Now we're simply going to go ahead and take that, slide it in. Once again, you can put it anywhere you want, but what I recommend is if you're doing the speedboat kit, there's a little flashing here that you're going to see. Just line it up with that. If you're using the Hextronic and the same electronics we're using, it's going to be beautiful. As you can see, there's no binding whatsoever on that servo, and it conceals that push rod beautifully. Now we'll go ahead and repeat the process on the other side. At this point, our wings and our elevons and our servos are all done. Now the beautiful thing, there's no more servos. There's no more complicated stuff. It's all going to be rewarding from this point on. So let's go ahead and do the most rewarding thing, and that's the nose of the plane. Go ahead and put your wing to the side for the moment. Let's pop out our panel. Now granted, I always use the speedboat kits, but please do not hesitate to try scratch building this. This has a lot of very simple curves, it doesn't take long, and it's only 2 sheets of foam board. So please, give a hand at it. Our goal is to equip you to scratch build someday, not be slaves to speedboat kits. If you want the convenience, we appreciate the support and you coming back to the store and buying them, but we don't want to make you feel obligated. We want you to make memories. Go ahead and take your fuselage piece and remove the excess foam from the cavities. Now this should be very normal for you if you built any of our swappable series before. You simply crack it open, bend it 180 degrees, and then use your fingernail to bring that cavity to life. This is going to be where your fuselage folds together. Now this is your first build ever with any foam board or anything. You're going to see these principles are always going to build on each other and going to be common from one plane to another. Make sure in your cavities that you have no excess foam. You can use your fingernail to scrape that out, or a razor blade if you want. And if you're scratch building at home, these are going to be marked as red lines, 50% score cuts. Make sure when you crack it, it's a nice clean crack. If it's not good, fold it back and redo your line. It's a lot easier to do it now than later. If you ever have to, you can just drag your razor blade. Don't go all the way through. Just let it kind of seal the deal for you there. You can also use, if you wanted, the back end of the razor blade if you're really worried about cutting through. It'll still do the same effect to the foam. There we go. Now you're going to see, if this is your first time building with Flite Test, you're going to see two different types of folds. One's an A fold and one's a B fold. This is using a B fold currently, and what the B fold is where the side cheeks of the fuselage are going to be next to the bottom plate. Now this is kind of a cool thing. This is a new technique we're going to be teaching you, and it's very common in the RC world with foam board, but we're yet to use it until now. This front here is going to be the nose of our F22. If you look here, this is not poster board. This is actually foam board, so it's much more rigid than things like our cruiser. And that's because you're going to be dinging it up. You're going to be doing combat. You're going to be hitting things. You don't want to crinkle your nose immediately. You want something nice and rigid. So to get this curve without lots of bubbles, we simply are going to go ahead and remove the paper from this score line here all the way forward. This paper comes out very, very easily. Just like that. Doing this is going to keep that paper from having to bunch up and give you a very nice transition. At this point, we're going to want to do one more thing. This is going to be the area where our battery sits down in, and if you put Velcro on top of foam board paper, after a couple releases, it's going to pull that paper right up, and we don't want that. So I'm simply going to go ahead and take my tape and put a protective layer right down on top of it. You can also loop it around just a little bit. It's a lot easier to do this now than when the plane's all put together. So this will give your Velcro a nice rigid area to grip onto. Another thing, if you wish, you can also take clear packing tape and actually apply it while the plane is flat to this whole surface here. Reason being, it's going to be belly landing, but right now it's winter. If you don't want your plane getting warped and wet, you can always use packing tape to reinforce it. Just be aware that it is going to get a little bit heavier, but an alternative tip is after the plane is assembled, use the Minwax. There's a link below we can put on there on how to Minwax your plane. There's a special Minwax you can get. It's affordable, goes on beautifully, and enables you to paint your plane afterwards. In your kit and on the plans, you're going to see this little gauge. This is your fin gauge, but on the other side here is a 90-degree angle. We're going to use that 90-degree angle to make sure we get our fuselage nice and square. So beginning our build, this is a B fold. The B fold means the side cheeks are going to go next to the bottom plate. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue favoring the side cheek of the bottom plate here. So we're putting the glue where it really counts. Once we have that, I'm simply going to hold this down firmly, the bottom plate down firmly, and rotate the side cheek up to meet the bottom plate. Once again, keeping the bottom plate next to, not underneath, the side plate. If you have a little excess, you can always squeegee it in and take our 90-degree angle and make sure it's nice and true. Do this with every joint you make to make sure. If it's crooked, you can adjust one, but you can't adjust them all at once. If need be, you can go back before you do this fold and reinforce it with another bead of glue. Totally up to you. It's a very, very strong joint on its own. Next, we're going to go ahead and do the same process on the other side. Start from that crease line, working our way back, stopping just before so we don't squirt out too much glue. Laying it flat on the table with the bottom plate flat, and then the side cheek going next to the bottom plate. Always reconfirm that you have the right proper fold with every time you bend that foam up. It's very easy to change it now, but once it's dried, it's going to be much more difficult. Now we're going to go ahead and really make this thing strong by doing our top plate here. Now this is a B fold, so the top plate in this case is going to be next to the side cheeks, not on top. If you do this area right here, this isn't going to be naturally, you won't be able to naturally do the wrong kind of fold here because it'll just make it look awkward. So that's a good thing. That's why it's so important to start off on the right foot. And we're going to do both sides at the same time. Bead of glue here, and a bead of glue on the other side. Don't have to rush it. We're going to just go ahead and establish where it needs to be. And I love using the table as my friend to help me out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the edge of the building board, and I'm going to push it hard against the table and hold these side cheeks where they need to be. Doesn't hurt to go back and just make sure everything is still nice and true and straight. Don't fret it. This whole fuselage is a little bit twisted. It's not going to do a single thing to the flying characteristics. It's still going to fly great. It's just making it look nice. You can see when pushing against the table and using the table as your friend, what a nice, beautiful seam that you get in your fuselage. That's what we want. Nice and crisp and clean cuts. You don't want to put so much glue that it's rounded, because when it's rounded, that means things are off center. And I put a little bit of tape and I crossed over that line there. So I'm just going to go down with my razor blade. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that seam, because what I want to do is physically open this area up so I can put glue where it needs to be. But this is going to be a new technique and a new way of bending foam. It's very, very simple and it's been done before, but we've never done it. So I just want to walk through the steps here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put a bead of glue on both sides, just like we were doing with our top plate. But in this case, you can see where my thumb is, right over this little emblem here. We're going to use that as leverage, because we don't want to crush this area and dent it. You always want to handle your foam nice and carefully. It'll get stronger as you build, but in its infant stages, it can be creased easy. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it here and here and support it. We're going to put our glue down, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently roll this on top, and then I'm going to roll this forward, and then use my two fingers here and here to pinch it. So all the pressure with turning is going to be in this very strong area down where my thumb is, but then the pinching force to bring it together is going to be on the top, and then you can kind of push down together and keep this nice and tight. Go ahead and practice this before you have the glue on. Make sure you're comfortable with the way it's going to line up and fit. And also, the more you bend this foam up, the more it's going to receive that angle. You could also, if you wanted to, take a little hair dryer and put a little bit of heat on that and do this, and rock it forward and let it keep that memory and cool down. But you also stand the chance of warping the side cheeks of your fuselage. Alright, now that we're happy with that, we're going to go ahead and put our glue only on the first half. Do one half at a time. Oops, a little messy, that's okay. And here we go. We're simply going to rock this down, roll it forward right to the nose, and just a light pinching pressure. Nothing too aggressive. You don't have to manhandle the foam. Let this dry thoroughly. If you did everything right, you're going to have a beautiful solid seam that's very, very smooth on the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and do the top. This area in the center here, moving this, we're going to want this crushed down, and we're going to go ahead and do a couple test fits, just like we did with the bottom, just to make sure everything lines up nice. And if everything is good, you're going to have a nice round nose, nice solid nose, and everything's going to be beautifully squared. That looks great. Alright, we're going to open this up. One neat thing about hot glue is it also softens the foam it hits. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bead right here on the nose. Not enough to really build up excess because it's not going to go anywhere, but to actually soften it up and secure it. And I'm going to do the exact same thing I did on the bottom. 2 beads. And this time we're going to not use the table, but our hands. So be careful not to burn yourself. I'm simply going to pull this up. And this is why it's so important to practice these moves beforehand. You know exactly what to do. And you don't have to hurry on it. You have a couple, 20 seconds before everything's locked in. So don't be hasty. Alright, our nose of our FT22 is now officially done. It's onto the canopy. Now you can see with the canopy, this is an A-style fold. A-style folds means the side cheeks are going to go on top of the bottom plate, just like in the etched-in diagram there. So go ahead and remove that excess foam, make your cavity, and we'll put this together. This is also very crucial to make sure this is 90 degrees as well, because if your fuselage is perfect, you want this to be perfect so it fits in really good and snug. And speaking of snug, there's no barbecue skewer keeping this canopy on. There's a nice tight friction fit. So you don't need to really worry too much about that. If it is loose, make sure you shove a barbecue skewer or some way to fasten in, or just a little piece of tape to tape it on. But I kind of like that clean look without any barbecue skewers or worries. Alright, in this case now, since this is an A-fold, I'm going to go ahead and favor my glue towards the side cheeks instead of the bottom plate. And in this case, the side plate's going to go on the bottom, and I'm going to roll the bottom plate up to it. Once again, keep it level. Once again, A-fold, favoring the glue on the side cheek. Doesn't have to be perfect. Putting the side cheek on the table and rolling the bottom plate up to a 90. Our next step is to install the poster board on top of our canopy. Now before we do this, just make sure that everything fits. You should have a nice snug fit all the way down in. And that looks good. Now if you're wondering how you get it out, there's an area right here. You can simply push your finger and pop it out. I'm happy with the fit. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Now with the poster board, we're going to actually fasten our poster board on the side. It's going to make a bend, go along the top, down the front, and then we're going to reinforce it in the front and the back with a little piece of tape. So to do this, make it a little bit easier, go ahead and just take an eyeball reference on where you want to bend. You got an extra inch basically of material that you have to use, so it's not a big deal. What I like to do is take my razor blade, hold it parallel, push it down against the table, and then roll that up. It's going to give you a really nice, sharp, crisp bend. And that's really good with poster board because it's hard to bend poster board nice and crisp. Now we have a really great angle to establish that's going to let our canopy nest right into the poster board. Let's go ahead and reinforce this area. Little dot of glue. Do this slowly. Don't rush and try to do the whole thing at once or you're going to get really overwhelmed. One other weird thing is hot glue loves to transfer heat through poster board. I'm not sure why, but it does. So we're just going to go ahead and set that down in there and let it thoroughly dry. If you have to, you can even push it against the table like this. The better you get this starting point, the better your canopy is going to go together. Alright, now that we have our anchor point established, go ahead and run a bead start to finish on the very top of the canopy. Just like that. And we're going to use the table once again as our friend. I'm going to go ahead and provide this and keep this from slipping. And then I'm going to push down against the table and roll this whole thing up, keeping it centered the whole time to the best of my abilities. Now if everything is done right, by pulling this against it, it's going to keep that paper nice and tight against the canopy. Just make sure you check your fit, and if you need any encouragement by pushing against it, go ahead and do that now. Sometimes you can even rock it back and forth a little bit. Next we're going to make a crease by taking our razor blade and placing it right where it needs to be on the other side and folding it against it. Just like that. You can also do this with a metal ruler or any kind of thin piece of metal. Just establish that crease so it doesn't round off in that area. You want a nice sharp crease if at all possible. Once we have that, we're going to finish off it with a bead of glue. And once again, with the table as our friend, we're going to fold this up and press against it. A neat trick with the razor blade is you can actually take this and you don't have to try to get through it the very first time. Just drag it where it needs to be. And after about 3 slices, you'll get a really beautiful, nice cut on both the front and the back. And actually, this one's perfectly level. We don't need to worry about it. But what we do need to remove is this area of material from here over, right up to that crease. That's another really important reason on establishing that crease, so you have a good reference mark. So I'm simply going to take this in here, pull it off, and do this with all 4 corners. And there we go. Now, if you don't like pushing through the bottom of the fuselage to release your canopy, there's a really easy solution for it. This is the back of the canopy right here. You can simply take a piece of tape, about 2 inches long, fold over about 1/2 inch to make a little tab, like you see right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Next, place a little tab just above the canopy on the back, and then fold it under. Now it'd be a good time to also go back and reinforce that, and also the poster board, so when it pulls, it doesn't put any extra stress on that. There we go. And we're going to do the same on the front here. This is also going to make the canopy slide in a little bit easier. A little excess, we'll trim that off. There we go. Alright, let's go ahead and test fit it. There we are. Very nice fitting canopy. Now if you want, you can use that little pull tab, pop it right on off. Now feel free to use this technique on a lot of your own designs too. We don't want to just have you building our own airplanes, but we want you to give you techniques that you can use on your own designs. And when you do, by all means, post them on our articles on FliteTest.com. We'd love to see them, and also we'd love to see other people blessed by your designs. Next we're going to bring back our wing, and it's time to unite our nose and our wing together. Now before we do that, we're always going to do a test fit. It's always a good idea to do test fits. Simply slide the nose of your fuselage back in, and you're going to see there's a little groove that's going to seat in. Once you get to that groove, a little bit of down pressure, and it fits like a glove. Now the whole idea is this, that you don't have to worry about your fuselage getting off at an angle, and everything links together so you see as little exposed edge and foam as possible. Our whole goal is to make this simple, but still make it look really, really great and exceptional, like you put a lot of time into it. That looks wonderful. We're going to go ahead and remove it the same way we put it on. And I'm going to go ahead and put a bead of glue on these bottom plates here and here. And we'll repeat that move that we just did. We're going to press down nice and firm. Make sure everything's seated nicely. Our next step is to install the vertical stabilizers. Now, this 90-degree angle that we use has a bevel on it. This bevel is for your fin angles, so you're going to want to keep that handy. But the first thing we're going to do is test fit it, and also establish the angle that we need, just like that. Now, as we rotate this up, it's creating a gap here, and we don't want that gap. The easiest thing to do is take a piece of wood, a barbecue skewer, something like that, and on the corner that needs to be crushed in, just run over it just a little bit. That's going to help your fin be a lot stronger because it's going to remove that excess pocket there, but also it's going to naturally fall where it needs to be. Just like that. Do this one at a time. Don't rush this part. We'll go ahead, put a little bit of glue down, slide it back down. Once again, always practicing your moves before you put the glue down. It's just going to make everything fall in place much nicer. Now what I like to do is just push a little bit beyond where it needs to go, and then take that fin angle and push it against it so it's pushing against that. Once you have that, it's going to establish that angle, and we can go back and apply a nice bead of glue right there. If you want to drive it in, you can. Give this a good few minutes to dry before you go ahead and remove it. You want this to be good and solid. Now that this is dry, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Don't be hasty on this. It's worth 3 minutes of wait time. Don't rush it. Back to the glue. We'll drop it in front. We'll drop it back. Once again, I like to push back a little bit further, and then push this up, and it holds it nice and tight. Now, say for some reason that this does sag one way or another. Say the fin falls a little bit too close to the wing, or it's a little bit more vertical than it should be. Just match the two up. You don't have to try to fix this. Just make them both as close as possible. You're not going to lose any performance. The plane flies too slow and it's too stable to really feel that difference. Once again, we'll go back and reinforce. Now we're going to go ahead and assemble our FT Element Simple Firewall. Now you can only really put this together one way, but it doesn't hurt to walk through it. Simply pop out your pieces, remove any flashing if you need to, and make sure everything fits nice and clean and tight as a dry fit. So we're just going to go ahead and just do a really quick assembly. Should be nice, tight, almost popping together. I like doing the two side cheeks first, using the table as our friend so you don't break anything. Take this bottom plate, put your front firewall on, and then rotate it up into your side cheeks. Just like that. Put a lot of care to try to get everything so it's just tight enough to be tight, but not too tight to assemble without breaking. And that looks really, really good. You can see everything fits together nice. Now, some people don't like this, but I do, and for the power plants we're using, it's not a real big deal. I like using medium viscosity instant glue and simply putting a nice bead and then letting it soak in. You can also use thin, but make sure it's really tight if you're going to use thin, because thin does not bridge any gaps at all. Now normally you can put the glue on and you push it together, but what happens is if you make one slip up and everything falls, the glue kind of sets up and the tolerances are so tight it's very hard to get it back together right and true. So I like letting it just squeeze in there, let it go a couple seconds. Now if you use kicker like I do, let it soak in for a little while before you go ahead and give it a little spritz and seal the deal. Now that your firewall is all done, go ahead and mount your firewall for your motor to it. Also make sure that the grub screw, if you use it, is pointing up so you can access it with your Allen wrench. You don't want to make it go in where you have to poke a hole through the bottom of the plane. You always want to make sure your grub screw is accessible. Alright, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and install this as a 24-gram Hextronic motor, 1300 kV. It's a fantastic motor. We also use Laser Toys Blue Wonder. They're both fantastic. Like them both. And I'm going to make the actual wires go down through the bottom. Reason being is on this one, we actually have a little recess, so all the wires will be beautifully hidden. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the grub screw. Make sure you don't tighten it too much and your motor spins nice and free. Also, this will take up to a 947 slow fly prop on this. So make sure that your slow fly prop has the numbers pointing forward. You don't want them pointing backwards. You're going to really suffer with power and draw a lot more amps than you need, and it's going to really sound funny. Now that we're happy with this, the reason we put the prop on is we want to take it over to our airplane. We want to slide this. Now 90% of the motor setups we made, this foam should be right at the surface of the firewall, and that should center beautifully. But for some reason, if it's a little bit different, you can move it forward and backward. Just make sure that you have proper clearance between both sides. That looks good. We're going to take our hot glue, put a nice healthy bead on the bottom, and whenever you're gluing something that requires some strength, make sure that you move it back and forth. Now on the FT Versawing, I advise people to remove the paper. I'm yet to see where this has been a real issue with having the paper, because the fuselage actually keeps the paper down. But say you do have damage, go ahead and remove that paper and glue the side cheeks and the bottom once again. But I don't think you need to worry about it too much. There we are. Our next step is to install the receiver. We're going to go ahead and make our connections. Just make sure that ground is on ground, signal is on signal. You're not going to blow anything up, but it'll be really awkward if it doesn't work. The way you can tell your signal is by a little horseshoe, and generally the signal wires are going to be either orange or white. The little dash or the little minus is ground, and the middle wire is always positive. That way, even if you put it in backwards, chances are you're not going to fry anything. There we go. It's kind of a guessing game, but go ahead and plug in one to the elevator and one to the ailerons. If it's backwards and we can't go ahead and use our reversing to get the proper throws, we simply reverse these two. And if you have any questions about Elevon mixing, we have a video we can link down below that'll help you. It's showing how to mix all different types of radios and different types of configurations. So this is all ready to go. We're going to go ahead and bind it to our receiver and get everything ready. Our next step is to go ahead and bind this to the radio. Now if you haven't already done this, make sure that your radio is on Elevon mixing. That's very important because it's unconventional. You're not going to have a good experience. Only one elevator is going to move and the other one's going to act as aileron. Ring tape. Elevon. Let's go ahead and bind this up. Now because I fly a lot of Horizon and Spectrum products, this bind plug works on a lot of different manufacturers. I just keep it on my key ring. Wow, great. Awesome. Alright, we're bound up and our controls are right, but as you can see, they're not locked in. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get these level, but not completely level. We want a little bit of positive pressure because every one of these planes needs a little bit of reflex up to fly properly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give it just a touch of up, and we can get that reference off by just using a flat piece of foam. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want them both to be even. Now at this point, we can just match these up together like this. There's really no way to gauge this other than basically just a degree or two up. And it's always better to have a little too much up and launch it and have it kind of pitch up on you than pitch down. And if it's totally level, you're going to pitch down. The easiest way to check and see if your elevons are set up correctly is when you pull back on the stick, both elevators go up. If you give right elevator, the right aileron goes up. Left elevon goes up. And that looks great. The reason we're talking about a lot of beginner principles is this technically could be some people's first or second airplane. It actually looks like a jet, but it flies incredibly stable. I still think the F22, and there's a lot better trainers out there, but for the fact that it looks so cool and takes such a beating, a lot of people have jumped right into this plane from the very beginning, and although they have some crashes, the thing takes the hits and keeps on going. Our next step is we're going to go ahead and conceal our equipment here, and you can either put this up inside your fuselage here, or you can put it back on the belly plate. It's totally up to you. Use a little dab of hot glue or a little piece of tape, whatever you want. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead, put the speed control on one side, or I'm sorry, the receiver on one side, and the speed control on the other. You can always dress up your wires if you're concerned about it falling back on the prop with a little piece of tape. The nice thing is this is all going to be hidden by the belly plate, so you're not going to see it. So you're well protected. Keeping wires fastened down cuts down a lot of noise these prop and slots make. There we go. And we're just going to simply route this wire right through here. Next, remove the last piece of foam you have on your kit, and that's your belly plate. We're going to want to remove this excess foam here on the edges and make sure you get it nice and clean, because the cleaner you get this, the cleaner the belly is going to look. Alright, now that we have that excess removed, this is going to be your belly plate. You can also cover this with tape. That'll give you a nice skid plate, so if it gets wet or anything, it's not damaged. But most of the brunt and most of the force is going to come on this bottom plate. That's why there's no battery hatches on the bottom of the nose. So we're going to go ahead and test fit this. And if we're happy, we just leave it be. Perfect. You can see that recessed area meets nice and clean, and that way you don't have any exposed foam board. Now keep in mind, if you're catching these planes, this can be a real danger to cut your fingers. You want to be careful with that. If you want to put a piece of tape on it, a wonderful contributor at FliteTest.com made a great article about rounding over the leading edge with a hot iron. It worked wonderfully. Another option is take some barbecue skewers and actually line them on the leading edge, make a nice round, tough leading edge. These things are fantastic for combat, so they're a lot of fun. And our whole goal with it is to go out and make memories with other people. For this one, I don't want to glue this down. You could if you want. I'm simply going to take some tape and I'm going to tape it in. That way, if I ever need to get back to my electronics, it's just a matter of taking a razor blade and cutting them out. There we are. Now I'm just going to lift it up and point it at you. You can see this not only has a lot of function, protects your equipment, but it looks fantastic. Now when it comes towards you, you have a three-dimensional nose, you have beautiful air ducts. Our last step in the airframe is, of course, to put the Velcro in. Now it's important to position the Velcro where the battery's going to need to go to balance out the airplane. The balance point for this is actually right here and right here. And you can tell that by these two little marks to put your fingers right at the very corner there. So, in most models, if you're matching the setup where you're using the Hextronic 24 gram or the Blue Wonder, in this case it's going to basically put the battery right at the very back of the nose right here. So we're just going to drop that down, push it in. You don't want to put it all the way to the nose. This plane will fly nose heavy, but you're going to have a tremendous amount of up trim, and when you roll it inverted, it's going to take a ton of forward pressure in order to keep it inverted. So play with your balance, find the way you want it. The more nose heavy you get, it will fly fine, but you're not going to have as good a high alpha, and you're not going to have as good a inverted. So just keep that in mind. Your FT22 is now officially done, but on a lot of our kits we offer decal kits, but we found rather than go ahead and making a unique one to the F22, this bottom line here actually matched perfectly the line we were drawing for the canopy. So rather than having a whole bunch of different kits, we're just going to go ahead and repurpose the FT3D decal kit and basically save ourselves space on the shelves and also give you a little extra material if you need. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply cut this out and I'll show you how we put it on. I'm going to go ahead and trim fairly close just so I can see what's going on. And if anyone has never put decals on, these kind of decals are fantastic. They're basically high quality vinyl decals and they have a low tack back mask that won't harm your foam. And in this case, we're going to use this little point right here. It's really hard to see on the camera, but it'll be very clear with the naked eye. That's going to be our point of reference, and so this back one right here. That's going to be the angle that we're actually utilizing. So we're going to go ahead and take this, and we're going to peel, make sure our back mask takes the actual vinyl decal. We're going to take that point, try to do this so the camera can see it easily. We're going to take that point, and don't put the back mask at the point, put the decal at the point of where the nose, it's so hard to see at this angle, there we go. The nose pitches up to the canopy, and then follow the very back of this so the tip goes where the canopy ends. This is actually really close to the angle we originally were going to establish, so we might as well just go ahead and use the same decal, then trim off the excess. So we don't want to just pull it off now. What we want to do is go over with a credit card or a piece of foam and really work it on there. Now don't try to peel the back mask off and put this on loosely. Back mask gives tremendous amount of rigidity this way as well too. It keeps the decal from warping. Now we're simply going to go with a nice sharp razor blade and we're going to trim off the excess. There we are. And we're going to go ahead and peel up. Take that back mask nice and sharp. There we go. And I'll separate. I like to pull at a nice sharp angle so it's not pulling the decal away from the actual foam. Our next step will be to do the top of the canopy. And this actually is the same thing from the decal kit for the FT3D, and it fits beautifully. We're simply going to peel it off with a back mask applied. I'm going to lay it flat on the ground, or flat on the workbench. And I'm going to carefully line and keep my lines parallel. And then just simply rock forward, pressing it down. And once it's pressed down, I'm going to use my hand or a credit card or a piece of foam and really work that in so it sticks really well to the poster board. This time you can also kind of wrap it around as well. Then do the same thing as we did before. Take your knife, trim it. You can also use scissors if you're not allowed to use knives. If say a child's building it, you don't want them to work with sharp objects, scissors work great. Any of these kits, you can build 90% of it without ever needing a razor blade. You can substitute sandpaper or scissors with almost all of the steps, unless you get to the advanced builds. Most children aren't building things like FT Cruisers or FT3Ds. We'll just simply cut this out. But the FT Simple series is going to be designed so children and adults can build these together and both have a great experience. There's a lot of fantastic YouTube videos on applying decals, and we watch a lot of them, so these techniques may not be exactly right, but they work really good for me. But decals and vinyl graphics are a fantastic way to get great results from your plane. The FT Duster was done completely with decals, and it makes it rigid, waterproof, and looks amazing. Cool. We're going to repeat the same process on the other side, and we're out to fly. Well friends, as before any maiden flight, you always want to make sure your CG is right, and that's going to be depicted by the position of the battery. Now, if your battery is heavy, or say you have a motor that's incredibly light on the back, you can also put your battery on the belly plate right here, and actually use this shelf area right here if you need to be. So just make sure it's done right, but in this case I'm pretty sure this battery is going to balance out just fine down right about here. Now my favorite battery to fly with is an 800 milliamp, but I got 1,000. On windier days it's better to have a little bit heavier than a little bit lighter for penetration reason. And we're going to go ahead and check our balance. Just make sure your fingers are right where those dots are. And life is good. Just a touch nose down is perfect. Alright, well, she's ready to go, ready to maiden. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and finish decaling up. I sincerely want to thank you guys, and once again, all the great designers that made the F22 prop and slots so popular. Thank you. This build is because of you. I don't want to act like we came up with this design. We simply took it and we went ahead and put our flight test spin on it. I really hope that you take this opportunity to grab a child, grab a friend, build a squadron of these things, make a memory. The whole idea with the kits that we're producing and the plans that we're producing is that you go out and make a memory. So for the ones that are doing it, God bless you. For the ones that are thinking about doing it, go out and do it. The rewards are exponential. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and decal this up. I want to thank you for watching. Also, any links to any of the stuff I mentioned below are down there. This is available officially at the store. The first set of 250 get a free decal, and also available in the store coming out. A lot of you guys were asking about bigger logos they can stick on. These are color matched to our current decal kits, and they're great quality back mask on there. These are also available at the store. Not included with the kit, but they look fantastic on any airplane. Alright, thank you for watching.